finding a way to enter the human condition and issues that we might call of strong emotions. I mean, even using the term mental illness we know is controversial. But we certainly know that we have angst. And we know that there's things that are easier to comprehend and ways that we find a way out and through. And I know for me, art has always been that way, to work through angst, to work through what feels unable to be understood or fully transcended. And I think we know, for all of us who make art or feel the power of art in this room, how much it keeps us vital, keeps us connected to what deeply matters to us. I lived for over 20 years in a house in Portland, and for many reasons it was time to not live in a house anymore. And I was raised in apartment buildings in New York, in Brooklyn, which you probably can tell, right, from this accent that I never lose, no matter, even though I haven't lived there since, 30 years or more. But that was a real transition, because that was our home for over 20 years, even though we knew it was time. And so this first poem is about the disorientation of moving. And now we're in our apartment a year and a half or so, and this is not how I feel at the moment. But this was very much close to that. For those of you who have moved or made transitions later in life, there was that, oh, I'm disoriented here. Okay. Moving. My head is leaden and my shoes stone. I own 2 dwellings. One is lonely and empty. Its fuchsia and Japanese maple cry. The other barely knows me, toys with me, and has hidden my fettling knife and writing book. Fettling is what clay artists use. It's a particular kind of knife. I'll say that again. And has hidden my fettling knife and writing book. Once I could take letters, a few or many, and combine them into words angels would whisper, but now I can only muster waste paper basket, toilet rolls. I ride up and down with the weary whose houses also left them. I know the key is on the 13th floor, but it's missing from the panel of buttons, and no flashlight will get me there. Before my divan knew solitude, now I recline into her armless back. The bridge between my waning life and my inchoate one is a burnt offering. Outside the window, ash falls. And you probably remember when the ash was falling, right? So this was also obviously autobiographical. Why the 2 houses is that we hadn't sold our house yet. We were living in this apartment. So if any of you know that's challenge. That was one of them, yes. Okay. This one is kind of going with Ingrid's theme and of social justice, and she and I have often shared our commitment, and that's why we've read together around issues of social justice. In the 90s, I worked in Cambodia with the UN, and so I was particularly despondent about what happened in Srebrenica when the UN peacekeepers did not protect the Muslims. And I'll give you the little information because you don't know the Srebrenica massacre, also known as the Srebrenica genocide, refers to the July 1995 killing of more than 8,000 Muslim Bosnian men and boys. And the reason I thought about this poem today, did any of you happen to see on OPB the trial of Ratho Mladic? It was just on OPB, and he was found guilty on November 22nd, 2017 at the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, and was sentenced to life imprisonment after being found guilty of 10 charges, 1 of genocide, 5 of crimes against humanity, and 4 of violations of the laws or customs of war. So he will not be leaving prison alive. Okay, this is called Moonlight. This time, the truck, the dirt road, the field is in Srebrenica. He is packed in a battered flatbed with other men, old, young, whimpering in fear. The truck lurches a few kilometers down a back road. 5 hauled out, 5 shots. A few more kilometers, 4 dragged out, 4 shots. Again, the truck comes to a halt. A boot on his rump pushes him out. His wrists tied, he lies face down, hears gunfire, tastes blood, perhaps his own. Crabgrass marks the man's face. His nostrils are forgetting how to take in air. The moon is full. In all direction it stares at human beings past sorrow. And now this man, the weight of his silenced body pressing in to the unfurrowed field. The next one's a little lighter. This is from my, I would say, autobiography in verse. And one of the things about poetry is that, you know, there's no poetry fiction and poetry nonfiction, so you could really mix it up, right? So some of this has, I would say, more factual truth, some of it is invented, and some of it is only, as the only child, its will is truth, right? No one to disagree with my reality. And so this poem, I have a series of invented meetings or imagined meetings. Mostly with my parents, with famous people, right? And my dad had agoraphobia, which means at a certain point of his life, he couldn't go beyond a certain distance with anxiety, so it limited how he was able to function in the world. In midlife, he had this amazing experience where he was able to go through the Queens Midtown Tunnel for the first time and feel this incredible freedom. And so some people, there's many theories about why Emily Dickinson's life became smaller. And one of them was that she had agoraphobia. We know there's many theories. So this is imagining this. Ben Schneberg writes to Emily Dickinson. That's my father. Okay. Ben Schneberg writes to Emily Dickinson. And this is the epigraph. And something's odd within. The person that I was and this one do not feel the same. Could it be madness, this? Emily Dickinson. Emily, I am better now. I feel swell. Tunnels, bridges, and new towns welcome me. I will book a train from Grand Central Station and hire a buggy to your father's house. If you agree, and I pray you will, I will visit in a fortnight, a Sunday afternoon. All I ask is that you open your gate and extend your hand. Perhaps in time, when you trust me a little, you will venture outside, and we will sit together in the buggy's cab in front of your house. When you're ready, with a tickle of the whip, the horses will trot slowly, and we will see First Church's spiral from the safety of our cab. Or hide behind a maple tree and listen to the feet go in. My greatest desire is to quiet your fear as we go inside. I know your breath will quicken, your heart will race like a stampede of cattle. As we stroll through the white doors with your hand on my arm, the panic will pass like a fever. And when we sit in the last pew, your heart will again tick benignly as a clock. Willa Schneberg and Emily Dickinson. So this next one, for those of you who know anything about Passover Seders, which are coming up soon in Jewish tradition, one of the stories in the way you experience the Seder is as if you are reliving it. It's not history. You are again standing in the same situation, feeling what it's like, embracing, entering what it's like to be a slave in Egypt and to have your freedom. Okay, so this poem has some questions about that approach. Okay. Once I was a slave in Egypt. I was told that I was a slave in Egypt and that Pharaoh couldn't free me. After my God's annihilation of all firstborn, including the despot's precious son, slave girls behind their millstones and goats with milk-filled teats, only then were we able to flee. I am supposed to lug the servitude, not the vengeance, as a phantom limb, like Sylvia Cannon in Charleston. Did I stand on a platform 3 feet high and 10 feet long, so masters could get a good look at my girth and brawn? I would have never been a sound investment for Ramses II or Thomas Jefferson. He wanted hulking men, tall, free of blemishes, and dark as eggplants. I couldn't have classified as a fancy or a scrub. Those are like the house servants. I couldn't have classified as a fancy or a scrub either, not being particularly good at carrying silver trays through arched doorways, or finessed with a brush or a bucket, in fact. In fact, I would have been a complete failure. I would have glanced surreptitiously at squiggly shapes on the master's parchment. That fantasy is comforting. More likely, I would have been sluggish, my eyes unfocused looking down, and I would have been whipped or beaten to death like an old horse, too lame to pull the owner's carriage a moment more. So there's a sort of a series of poems that I'm working on about special cures, let's say, or treatments, depending how you look at it, and appliances that have been used in the history of mental health. So this one is called Love, and it's in the voice of a straitjacket. Right? And a straitjacket, I'm sad to say, is still being used in mental hospitals today. A straitjacket speaks. I wrap my canvas arms around you, perhaps a little too tightly. You stop struggling, your breathing quiets inside my narrow kimono-like sleeves. Your arms are nicely crossed and contained. I hug your chest and shoulders and imagine you in a coffin lined with red satin, a perfect white camellia covering each eyelid. I'm kind. I don't let them employ the crotch strap. You walk freely around the grounds. Although I never want to let you go, don't they wrest me from you? And doesn't the blood always rush back into your hands? You know the routine. They will release you, give you a spoon. You'll eat porridge before it cools. Now this one is also about a mental hospital, but something in a much earlier period, and has a little bit more levity, but still the sense of the incarcerated. This one is called Yellow Halo, and this took place in the Bloomingdale Asylum in New York in 1846. Because in that period of time, the whole idea was to take people out of life. And if you were in this bucolic setting, that would help you heal, which has some positive aspects. But people would also come on picnics to look at you. So it was still like being in a zoo, even though it was at least the grounds are beautiful. The insides weren't so beautiful. Yellow halo. I plead, and they answer crooked, especially Superintendent Bliney Earl. I birth curiosity so unique and wondrous that they belong in the Peel Museum, next to fossilized mastodon teeth and the prong-horned antelope. One at a time in my mind, I hold the marvel just so, until it emerges through a slit in my back that opens and closes and disappears when God whispers. Conical shells, nails, shank bones, horseshoes, passbooks from Nick Biddle's bank, brass doorknobs slide out, and wasps exit and circle above my head. They are my halo. Wear yellow jackets and are tender. Although free to roam, they choose to dwell in this cell with me and no longer habit their hate sting. Against the attendants, they are my shield, whose voices are thunder, fingers lightning bolts, forged to strike my forceps-marked face. And what's kind of amazing is that was his delusion and hallucination. You know, can you imagine thinking that things actually came out of your body in that way? I mean, what an amazing imagination if it wasn't so painful for him. This one I'm particularly reading because of Ingrid and Ralph's heritage. Do people know what the only mental hospital in the U.S. was for one particular ethnic or racial group? It was only one. Exactly. How do you know about that?
About it.
Really? Well, a lot of people do not know about it, and it was in existence for 35 years, and it was the only mental hospital only for Indians. And so it was decided that, of course, we could talk about that otherwise. But anyway, so this poem is about the intake at such a place in 1905, and completely run by white men who certainly did not know the languages of many of the people who were there, who obviously English was not their first language. And in those days, there was no difference between mental illness and what was considered imbecility. No distinction was made, okay. Intake at the Canton Asylum for Insane Indians, and that was the name. I am not changing anything. It was called the Canton Asylum for Insane Indians.
Also known as Hiawatha.
Yeah, but that's the nickname. The formal name is, yeah, Hiawatha is, again, another derogatory name, but the formal name was what I just said. South Dakota, 1905. And this is in the voice of the psychiatrist, and it wasn't really a psychiatrist, the medical doctor. Cross your legs. The legs remain tight against each other. Squeeze my hand. The hand stays limp in the lap. What is this? Bucket or this carrot? the brow furrows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Count backwards. Pick a favorite number. Something coarse, hoarse, whimpers out. Perhaps the charge's native tongue? Do you feel all right, excited, or depressed? Eyes closed, head flops down. Of course the patient speaks English but refuses to do so. Test is over. Return to your ward. And there's a little, you can see the little break there. What I believe is, if you kill the Indian, you save the man. That was a phrase at the time. If you kill the Indian, you save the man. It doesn't really matter what it is, Creek, Apache, or Sioux. She's just another imbecile. And of course what they meant, as you know, the same thing with the boarding schools. They're saying if you take the Indian culture away, then maybe there's a chance. And I'm going to end with this poem entitled Shelley's Heart. And it's really a love poem to my husband. Shelley's Heart. We have talked how easy it would be to jump holding hands, to die at the same moment, sprint over the half window of our high-rise downtown, crumple on the ground, our eyes open. Percy Shelley's fragile craft capsized near Livorno. His heart in a furnace of iron refused to burn. Mary wrapped her beloved's broken pump in a page of his elegy to Keats. They were together for 10 years. We have more than double that. If you are taken from me, I won't hold your heart in my cupped hands, swaddled in your words. Go deeper. Equanimity is not the goal. Alive, I caress your Buddha earlobes, pinch your ass shapeless inside your torn jeans, hear your voice resonant and sure as a singing bell. And in bed, you on your back, my side, body, and neck nest into you, as if we would always fit that way. Thank you.